My name is Susan Budd, and I'm the Director of Studies at ILSC Melbourne. Our first session is From Comic Strips to Conversations, Successful Speaking and Writing Activities in the Virtual Language Classroom, presented by Christine Ortega and Fiona Waybush. Fiona is the Director of Teacher Development at the Queensland Institute, and Christina is a teacher and consultant with the Queensland Institute. Over to you, Fiona and Christina.
Thank you so much, Susan. Look, it's lovely to be with all of you. We were just in Scott's session earlier, where it was very early in the morning for him in Spain, and the sun is just setting where we are up here in Brisbane. So lovely to see you. I'm joined by my colleague, Christina Ojeda Ortega. Give us a wave, Christina, and she'll be joining the conversation shortly. So let's kick off, everybody. We're going to share a little bit about us over the next 30 minutes or so. We're also going to be talking about some of the problems that we had with productive skills when we first went to virtual online classes. So thinking about speaking and writing tasks in particular. And then some of the principles that underpinned our practice as we started to dig a little deeper into what's happening, what's working, and what are some practical solutions for how we can enhance our delivery of tasks to students and increase their engagement in speaking and writing in the virtual classroom. We also hope to have some time at the end to summarize and wrap up and share a whole lot of resources with you, everything you see today, and respond to some Q&A or maybe some tips from you for us on what's worked well in your classrooms as well. So we have put a little snippet of our abstract there as well for those who might be joining and watching a little bit later. So in terms of a little bit about us, you heard earlier in Susan's introduction that Christina and I are both at the Queensland Institute, and we're a private education and training provider based here in Brisbane, but we're operating fully online. So we help schools and universities to design and deliver really practical professional development for language teaching and learning. And I share that because our contexts will inform who our learners are. So I deal with adult English language teachers and university professors on a day-to-day basis in the online virtual space. Whereas Christina, her experience comes largely from her work in the high school sector in beautiful Puerto Montt in southern Chile, working with high school English language learners. So both of us have used these tasks and examples we share with you today across the full spectrum of learners, from all the way through from high school language learners to adult teachers of language as well. As I mentioned, everything you see today we'll share with you on a Padlet. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, and we'll come back and respond to any questions that we can see there. And it was lovely to see some familiar names in the chat box earlier today as well. So we're going to launch straight into our Padlet, which is how we're going to run the session today. And you'll be able to access it a little bit later on as well. So take a moment to have a look at some of these pictures of students doing the traditional kinds of tasks in the physical language classroom, introducing themselves, group writing, producing stories and dialogues, describing a process. I wonder if you've ever asked your students to do those sorts of things. I'm sure you have. And I wonder if your students enjoy doing speaking and writing for their peers, for you, with their peers, co-constructing those pieces of writing or speaking tasks. And I wonder how that's going in the virtual language classroom. As I said, we'd love to hear from you a little bit later. So for us, we did have some challenges when we took these very same tasks into the virtual classroom and teaching fully online. And it's our response to those challenges and how we adapted those tasks that we want to share with you a little bit. today. But first, I want to share a bit about our thinking and how we got to redesigning those traditional tasks. Because I don't know about you, sometimes I would step out of my virtual classroom and I'd kind of look a little bit like this. I'm like, what just happened? That used to go so well in the physical classroom. What is going on? How come that didn't work quite as successfully as I thought it might in the virtual classroom? Of course, some of those speaking and writing tasks like introductions and story building and describing processes and things can still happen. We can operate those very well in breakout rooms and plenary and Google Docs and Padlets and all sorts of things. But what we discovered is that we had quite long courses, often over 10 weeks or more, and we were starting to limit some of the synchronous time that we would spend with students to reduce the sort of Zoom fatigue and starting to add more asynchronous time for students to be working and self-accessing and their learning a little bit more independently. So we needed a variety of approaches to delivering these tasks and keeping motivation really high, still wanting those tasks to be just as engaging, just as collaborative, and just as communicative in our virtual spaces. So in the virtual classroom, after we'd been working pretty solidly for a year or two exclusively online, we put our action researcher hats back on and said, what is going on here? Let's pause for a moment and think about what is working online, what is not working, and how will students work without me? And how are they doing that already? What is going on in that asynchronous time? And are there tools that we can use that might help us to be a little bit more efficient in how we go about setting up these tasks with students? And it was as we were having these conversations among our team and with our colleagues, I actually thought back to an article that I read many years ago, back in 2014, well before pandemic times, from our fabulous plenary speaker, Scott Thornbury, who was investigating purposeful use of technology in the language classroom at that time. And in particular, responding to Neil Postman's question about, well, what is the problem for which you are choosing that tech tool to solve an issue that's happening in the language classroom? And so he framed these problems really as 5 conditions that we need for successful language learning. And these will be familiar to us as English language teachers, but we know we need, number 1, sufficient and comprehensible input. We know we need opportunities for pushed output for speaking and writing and real communication. We know we need interaction, scaffolded opportunities for students to engage in communication in our classrooms and beyond. We know that we need optimal and timely feedback, whether that be from peers or from teachers. And if we make best use of all of those things, then hopefully motivation is the result to keep our learners learning. So we use these 5 things as we were thinking about which tech tools we might look at helping us to make some efficiencies, and started thinking, well, we don't really have a problem with input. We're managing that okay. We can set the context for our lessons. We can do the input capably and confidently. And the feedback's running pretty well. We've been doing that for years. We've always had digital approaches to feedback going well. So it was these areas of output. Have I got enough opportunities now in my virtual class with limited time? And how can I maximize that use of interaction in the asynchronous learning space? I don't know. And am I keeping my students motivated enough as we move through this long journey together? So it's at that point that we recognized that we needed some alternatives to the way we had been setting up our tasks for speaking and writing with students. And we also knew that we need to adapt our tasks and how we design them And we also wondered, isn't there an app for that? Isn't there something that will be the magic app that will help us to do this? Of course, there is not one single magic app or one single approach. But what we would like to share is one app that we did choose and did have success with in designing some tasks for ELICOS learners, for adult language teachers, and also for students in the Chilean high schools. So I'm going to hand over to Christina, who's going to share a little bit more of those examples with you now. Over to you.
Thank you, Fiona, for the lovely introduction. And as she mentioned before, can you see my screen? I don't know if you can see it.
It's coming now.
Yes, as she mentioned before, my name is Cristina Ojeda Ortega. I am a teacher of English from Puerto Montt in South Chile. And I am a part of the QI team as a junior consultant too. But enough of me, let's hit the road with this presentation. So as Fiona mentioned before, what app did we choose? In this case, the app that we chose is Canva. And why particularly Canva? Because it's an Australian digital design tool. It can be used to create posters and visual aids. It's for different professionals, but for teachers, it has wonderful resources as well as for students. And the best part, guys, it's for free. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to use it. It's free for you and your students. That sounds pretty awesome, right? Mm-hmm. And we have tried different resources, but today we are going to share with you 5 different resources that we have used and that have provided a really good result for us. The first one I'd like to introduce you is infographics. Whenever you are starting a new class with a new set of students, it can be a little bit tricky for them to introduce themselves, right? Self-esteem, confidence, sometimes is not the best part in students, and especially if you're trying to make them speak English. In this case, we have this tool and resource. Andrew is going to present us a little bit of himself by using an infographic about himself. He's going to share a birthday, favorite things about him, food, color, subject, a little summary of his likes and dislikes and hobbies. Pretty awesome, right? It can be a really good resource for students to introduce themselves in front of a class without feeling self-confident. And it can help them in so many ways, right? You are a new teacher in a new school. I have used this one, an infographic, to introduce myself. Hi, I'm your new teacher of English. What about me? My experience, fun facts about me, because teachers, we are not boring as people think. We are very interesting. And the expectations that you might have for your students and vice versa, right? And a little bit of contact information. It's always good to have a good rapport with your students. You can provide an email, Instagram, whatever you want to share with them, right? The second activity we have used with our students and have been pretty good, it's videos that we turn into dialogues and as messenger stories. It's a very simple activity that we can construct short conversations and dialogues without logging into the social media. We know that our students are technology natives. They were born with a cell phone in their hands. So using these kind of activities provide them the sensation that they're using the social media app, but they stay focused on the activity. As you can see, pretty simple, very easy. Hey, would you like to go to the movies tonight? Sure, a couple of emojis. Who doesn't love a little bit of emojis here and there? and they can turn it into little videos. Sounds pretty good, right? And if you're dealing with films or movie unit with your students, you can use this very useful and easy task. Let's give our internet a little bit of time. There we go. Okay, you can create projects and share the posters with the world. Your students can create their own films and their posters. This film is by Catherine F. Robertson, and this student created Rocket Kid. Rocket Kid is going to be a star by James Zavala, and it will be in theaters that certain date. So your students can have the liberty of creating different movies, different genres. And if you feel that this activity is not for you, it's not your cup of tea, let's watch a movie with our students and ask them to create a little film review. You might include passive voice or any other grammatical content, and let's ask them for some little information, right? Title, director, actor, even the rating. Maybe that movie was really bad for them. 0 stars. And they are going to provide a little review using the passive voice. So these different resources, you can adapt them to any sort of activity and content that you want to use them. And describing a process, sometimes that can be a little bit difficult. You can use numbers, 1, first step, 2, second step, and so on and so forth, right? But I noticed, for example, with this activity, that my students were having a really hard time studying science. Science can be a little bit difficult for students when it comes to study, right? So I gathered a couple of useful tips and use a little bit of images, colors to make a summary and put some tips for them, right? So describing a process, this might help you to study science and get better results, right? Or with a little bit of beginners students, we are going to talk about healthy breakfast recipes. Simple, interesting, just food vocabulary, right? And in this case, this activity was for them to identify different vocabulary related to food and match it with different images, right? Here we have Greek yogurt with nuts and fruits. We have strawberries, nuts, blueberries, raspberries, etc., right? And you can put some images and they can choose different images that they can use. Here we have another example, fruit salad with vanilla honey syrup. They use another colors, another set of images. The freedom is under one click away. How fun is that, right? And we come to the last resource that we have used, and personally, one of my favorites, that is the graphic short stories. Do you like comics or graphic novels? You and your students can create your own stories using this app. So let's take a look a little bit of the things that you can do in Canva with this specific topic, right? Canva offers different templates that they come with everything. The final result, an author life. Very simple, 2 characters that can be easily changed for your student's choice. Here you have the final result, right? But that doesn't mean that you don't have any other option. You can change the comic title. You can add another text here and there, change the distribution, and the different characters of your comic strip. It doesn't have to be these ones, or they don't have to be happy. You have a wide range of emotions here. And resource pages, like the bubble text, you can change them. But we have some authentic results here. These comics was created by Alexia Rivera and Florencia Salas from a school from Chile, my high school. So here it's a simple comparison, Coca-Cola versus lemon soda. Here the students were more into sharks, so they decided to use sharks in a different set of colors, right? You can take a look of the dialogue, how they distributed their the different text, and even authentic vocabulary. Whatever, I love you, bro. Me too, bro. Very hip vocabulary. They use everything that they've known, and they created this beautiful comic strip based on something as simple as comparing two types of soda, right? We have another authentic result, CR7 versus Messi. Clearly, these students were into football. So they changed the colors, different characters, Cristiano Ronaldo versus Messi. Who is better, right? They decided to do it based on football. Here we have another result that is based on two different famous people, Harry Styles and the female football player Christian Endler. They made their comparisons, right? These are authentic results, okay? So, but in order to get to those results, we are going to take a quick look to a sample class. This, he is Rodrigo Clavero. He's a Chilean high school teacher, and he designed and used this task, and this is the quick setup that he provided, right? How to win an argument using imperatives. Pretty easy, very straightforward. And as you can see, he used the most basic elements that we can use as teachers. A whiteboard and markers, nothing else, nothing more. And he introduced to how to compare two elements using a comic strip. How to win an argument using comparatives. The second part of this task was planning on paper. The students, as you can see, they were collaborating and negotiating how are we going to distribute this comic strip. You can see COVID is present everywhere. Those little masks are there. They can work with masks. They are little troopers, right? The following part of this class was adding dialogues. So how do we construct this conversation? The students decided what is going to be in bubble 1, in square 2. Different, how to set up this comic strip on paper. Very easy. Next step, let's go to the computer lab to co-design this comic strip. In this part, students negotiated context and register. How are we going to say it? What are we going to say in our story? As you can see, they work in pairs, using computers, and starting to use our app, Canva, right? And the final digital draft was especially designed to receive peer and tutor feedback. As you can see in this image, students could review the final product, and also they could change everything on every step of the way. The color, the design, everything, you know? And the tutor was only as a guidance, he didn't intervene, provide only feedback to the students. But I can describe many things about this experience, right? But I'm going to leave you with Rodrigo, and he is going to briefly explain us his experience using Canva in a Chilean high school. Let's hear about it. Let's give him a, yes, there we go.
Hi there, my name is Rodrigo Clavero and I teach English in Chile. I recently used comic strips to teach my students comparatives in English, and I did this through Canva. But before doing that, I asked them to create a draft. We called it a draft actually, but it was a comic strip on paper. So they had to draw and they had to write everything on this piece of paper. And after that, we watched a video on the basic features to create a comic strip on Canva, and we went to the computer lab and they had to do everything that they had done on paper, but this time on the app. I have to be honest, I had never tried comic strips on Canva before, so I was a little bit anxious and a little bit worried that it wouldn't work, but fortunately everything was great. Everything worked smoothly. My students seemed really motivated and engaged. They were really taking responsibility for their own learning. I was just monitoring. I thought that they would be asking questions all the time, but they didn't have any questions at all. It was like if they knew exactly what they had to do with the app, which was really surprising, because after watching the same video, the tutorial, I'm talking about the tutorial, I had my doubts, and there was some stuff that I didn't know how to do on the app, but they knew how to do them. And when I asked some of them, like, how do you know how to do this? They were like, I don't know, I was just, like moving around the app and trying different stuff. And they discovered some new features I had no idea they existed on Canva before. So it was a very enriching situation for me as a teacher and for them as students. I think I would try this again with different classes and with different levels as well, because it was a very positive situation and very learner-centered activity.
Thank you so much for sharing your students' wonderful work and your experience with us, Rodrigo. If you want to know more about Rodrigo, he's an QI alumni. You can check it out on the QI website too. And finally, some benefits about this. For me, one of the biggest benefits of using Canva in the virtual classroom is engaging the students in the speaking and writing process. It can definitely increase the students' collaboration. You saw it in the different evidence that we have in the classroom. Pair work really worked for them, right? It led to a beautiful result. It can be used to use different interesting genres. In this case, comics was a really good input for them. Like, let's do this. But if you like other type of genres, I'm sure that you can use it with different genres in your classroom, right? You can use different templates to save some times. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel? It's there. If you like it, just edit it and use that. It saves time for you as a teacher, and that's a valuable must. And for your students that they don't know where to start, they already have a template for that, right? You can store material very easily on Canva, or even here in Padlet. It's a very cool resource and very useful for teachers. It added the opportunity for language output. That was one of the most valuable benefits. Students use their previous knowledge as well as the new knowledge, in this case, the comparatives, to win a simple argument, right? And finally, enhances students' digital literacy. As Rodrigo mentioned, it was a very intuitive process for them. They just navigated the app and they found out how they could fix or add different things to their comic strips. So this was my experience on how to use Canva, also Rodrigo's experience. Now I will hand back to Fiona that will add some final tips.
Thanks so much, Christina. Thank you for sharing those wonderful examples, and always great to see students in the Chilean classroom. So I'm just going to wrap up as we come into our last couple of minutes of the presentation now and share some top tips from my experience of using these tasks with our students, from adults to even to young learners, in fact. So I can see there are some wonderful questions in the chat there. That's terrific. I can't actually reply in the chat at the moment, but we will have some time in a few minutes to respond to those questions in Q&A. Can you see my screen now with a green stapler and some other teacher tools? Can you see my screen? Yep, great, fabulous. So just like a stapler is a tool we take into the classroom to make things, Canva is a tool. So without the teacher, you know, not a lot of learning may occur. So some tips for designing tasks. We have a simple one-page task guide for students when we're setting up a task. As Rodrigo did, it might be simple things like having a challenge question. How can we win an argument in English? To sort of set up the use of language for the task, and then some language aims perhaps of using at least 3 comparatives, for example, in the comics that the students made, having some milestones for the steps in the drafting process, and also some links to how-to videos, all of which Canva does for you. You don't have to make a how-to video. They already have those available. I should point out, we're not sponsored by Canva. We just very much enjoy using it. And yes, you can use it on a mobile phone in the classroom as well. But it's really important that you allow just a little bit of time in class to set up the task well, to create that opportunity for live interaction with peers, to talk about how to manage the task, but also negotiating what they might include. And some time for you as the guide on the side, as I think it was Professor Mann said yesterday, and reminded us of that lovely expression of being able to be the facilitator in the classroom. And searching for free templates, of which there are many, and we will share those with you today. If you have a particular genre in your unit that you're working with, whether, as Christina mentioned, it be films, or you want to use comic books or newspapers for the passive, or whatever it is, searching within Canva to see if other teachers have already created a newspaper template, for example, that you can just share as a link with your students and they can get to work. So everything that you've seen here and access to all the templates that Christina and Roddy made for their students are also here. I'm going to share that Padlet link with you now. And you're very welcome to come in and pop a comment or a question to us here if we don't get to all of your questions in the Q&A session now. But I would love to say a big thank you to Christina and to Rodrigo, who are our alumni, for sharing their fabulous examples. It's Christina's first English Australia conference, so we hope you will give her lots of love in the chat. And it's been a pleasure sharing some of these ideas with everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a delightful time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina and Fiona. What an interesting topic today, and extremely useful for our teachers, especially as we're seeing our students return back in Australia. It's really exciting. So one of the questions that came through in the Q&A is, do these activities require a high level of digital literacy skills, considering it from a teacher and a student perspective?
Yeah, I think I can respond to that one from the teacher perspective. At first, I was a little bit nervous that Canva was outside of my comfort zone in terms of navigating all the bells and whistles and what it involved. But I think once I got into looking at the templates, and you could see that it was as simple as pretty much, if you have Word document skills, you have Canva skills. It's clicking, deleting, adding, inserting an image. It's no more challenging than that. And I think the beauty of the app is that it provides lots of little 1-minute how-to videos. So how to insert an image and how to change the background. So my students have enjoyed investigating those themselves to enhance their digital literacy skills. They also like using it for their own social media. So, you know, it has a lot of different appeals for them, I would say. And as we heard Roddy say in his experience as well, he was surprised at how intuitive it was for students to navigate.
Wonderful. And thank you very much. We've just come up on time. So thank you so much for such an engaging presentation. And based on the comments below, I believe that we'll have lots of people trying this really soon. So thank you, Christina and Fiona.
I wonder if you could share the Padlet link for us, Kerry, because we can't talk in the chat just at the moment. That would be wonderful. And then people can continue the conversation with us.
Excellent. Thank you. So we'll break for 5 minutes and we will be back with our next session. Hope to see you all there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
sharing. Bye. Thanks very much. See you soon, Christina.
Bye. Thank you so much.